All right, welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we're going to be exploring the book of Leviticus.
Leviticus.
And we're going to be using this scholarly annotated version so we can really get into some of the
Yes.
hidden depths and surprising relevance
I love it.
of this ancient text. I think a lot of people hear Leviticus and
Yeah.
think rules.
Rules, yeah.
But there's a lot more to it than that.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Way more to it.
So maybe we can just start by talking about some of the
Yep.
things that people maybe already know a little bit about, like
Sure.
the offerings and rituals.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me how
Mm.
detailed the instructions are for
Oh my gosh, yes.
preparing all the different offerings.
It's like an ancient book.
Yes.
Almost.
Like, which animal parts to burn,
Right.
where to sprinkle the blood,
Sure.
all that stuff. Why was all so specific?
Well, I think the thing to remember here is that they weren't just,
Mm-hmm.
arbitrary actions.
Right.
These were deeply symbolic actions, right?
Right.
And they were expressing ideas about
Yeah.
purity and atonement,
Yeah.
ultimately, their relationship with God.
It's like a dance
Yeah, like a carefully choreographed dance.
between humanity and the divine.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you have this whole concept of holy versus common,
Yeah.
which permeates like everything.
Everything, the
With
priest's clothes.
their clothing, how they conduct themselves, what they touch,
What's the significance of that,
boundaries.
right?
I mean, they're really defining what is sacred,
Right.
what is set apart for God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something we've really lost touch with, right?
Yeah.
Like they lived in a world where
Mm.
even the mundane was infused with
Right.
spiritual significance.
So did they feel this constant pressure then,
I don't know.
like to maintain this
I mean, maybe.
separation?
Separation?
It's hard to say.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thought, right?
Yeah, so it wasn't just about ritual purity, was it?
No.
Leviticus is also where we get those famous dietary laws.
Oh, yeah, the fringe?
So with all the clean and unclean animals.
Well, yeah, I mean, at first glance, it seems a little arbitrary, right?
It does.
The camel, for instance,
Yeah.
it chews the cud,
Okay.
which you think would make it clean.
Right.
But its hooves aren't divided,
Okay.
so it's unclean.
Huh.
So it's very specific. and
Right.
each detail has meaning.
So it's not just about avoiding certain foods for like hygienic reasons.
No, it's about purity.
Yeah.
It's about separating them from other nations,
Right.
reflecting a divine order.
Yeah.
And, the prohibition against eating blood,
Oh, right.
that's really tied to this idea that blood represents life,
Yeah.
which is sacred.
Yeah.
And it's reserved for, atonement rituals.
So their whole way of life was
Mhm.
a reflection of their relationship with God.
Absolutely.
And then, speaking of reflecting the divine,
Yeah.
let's talk about the priests.
Okay, the priests.
They had a pretty
remember,
unique role.
Unique role.
Yeah. So what kinds of rules and restrictions did they have to follow?
So many rules. So, there are regulations about their clothing, who they could marry, how they mourn the dead.
Okay.
All about emphasizing their separation and holiness.
Right.
They were the intermediaries between the people and God.
Yeah.
So they had to maintain
Yeah.
a higher level of purity
Yeah.
and conduct themselves accordingly.
Right.
It's a big responsibility.
Wow. So much pressure.
Yeah.
So it's not just the priests, though, right?
No.
Like Leviticus also gets really detailed about
Yeah,
bodily discharges and skin diseases.
it does.
Yeah.
I mean, so it might make you squirm a little. right?
Yeah.
There's very specific instructions for dealing with
Mm-hmm.
bodily discharges,
Yeah.
especially those related to male reproductive health.
Uh,
I remember, in a world without modern medicine,
Right.
these things were taken very seriously.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So preventing the spread of disease and
Yeah.
maintaining ritual purity.
Right, and that ties into
All ties
the
together.
relationship with God.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a lot of these seemingly strict rules, but
Yeah.
Leviticus also really emphasizes
Less.
social justice and ethical behavior,
It's true.
which I think might surprise some people.
I think so too. Because it's like this seamless blend of ritual purity and ethical conduct.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so amidst all these rules about offerings and cleanliness,
Hmm.
we find laws about treating the poor and vulnerable.
Like the gleaning law?
Yes, the gleaning laws. Exactly.
Uh-huh.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
I'm ensuring that the poor and foreigners could collect leftover grain
Right.
from the
yeah.
fields after the harvest.
Yeah, it's about preventing extreme poverty.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you have laws about honesty in business,
Yeah.
paying wages on time.
Yeah, all these things that are
Yeah.
really important.
So it's not just outward rituals, it's
Mhm.
about how you treat other people.
Absolutely.
Especially those in need.
It's about embodying compassion
Mm-hmm.
and acting justly.
That's a message that still resonates today.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, totally. What about the prohibitions against things like divination, magic, sexual immorality?
Well, I think all of those things highlight this idea of
Yeah.
building trust within the community, upholding the sanctity of marriage and family, living a life that's aligned with these ethical principles.
Yeah, it's like a blueprint
Yeah.
for a just and holy
A
success.
blueprint, yeah.
And then, of course, we can't forget about the Sabbath and the Jubilee.
Yes.
Yeah, the big one. So the Sabbath, a day of rest.
Rest.
You know, in this ancient agricultural society
Where work was never ending.
Yeah, it was a pretty radical concept, right?
It was, yeah.
I mean, did they actually get to rest, or were there exceptions?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
You know, scholars debate that.
yeah,
Obviously, the ideal was complete rest,
right.
but there were likely exceptions,
Yeah,
you know, for essential tasks,
yeah,
caring for livestock,
right.
tending to the sick.
Sure.
But even so, like, this principle of a dedicated day of rest
Yeah.
stands in stark contrast to
Oh, yeah,
our modern, always-on culture.
totally.
Think about it. What impact would a weekly day of rest have on our stress level?
Yeah, our relationships.
Our productivity?
It's something to think about.
It is.
Yeah. Then you've got the Jubilee,
The Jubilee.
which is even more radical.
It's mind-blowing. Every 50 years,
Yeah.
all debts were forgiven.
Yeah.
Land was returned to its original owners. Slaves set free.
It's a system designed to...
Yeah, prevent extreme inequality.
Yeah.
And ensure that everyone had a chance to thrive.
It's amazing.
It is.
What would that look like today?
I know.
We've only just scratched the surface here.
It feels like it.
But Leviticus has so much to offer.
It does.
Not just about ancient Israelite society, but about ourselves and the challenges we face today.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a testament to the enduring power of these ancient texts.
Totally.
You know, they speak to something deep within us.
Yeah.
And they continue to challenge and inspire us.
Yeah, so much to think about.
I know. We've covered a lot of ground.
Maybe we should just take a moment and digest all of this before we dive deeper in part 2.
I agree.
I think you have plenty to ponder already.
Definitely, yeah. I'm looking forward to part 2, though.
We'll pick up right where we left off
Oh,
and
yeah.
uncover even more fascinating insights. Sounds good. Until then, keep those thought-provoking questions brewing.
Will do.
See you soon.
See you then.
Welcome back to our Leviticus deep dive.
It's great to be back.
We were just talking about how Leviticus intertwines ritual purity with ethical conduct.
Yes.
And I'm curious, how did the ancient Israelites reconcile the need to follow all these rules with their desire for a close relationship with God?
Yeah, that's a good question.
You know, it's easy to get so caught up in the letter of the law that we
Right.
might lose sight of the spirit behind it.
Yeah.
But Leviticus acknowledges that sometimes people sin unintentionally.
Right, they do.
And there's this whole framework for atonement.
There is, yeah.
So it's not about
perfection.
striving for this impossible perfection.
No, it's about acknowledging mistakes, right?
Right.
And taking steps to make things right.
So do you think that the detailed instructions for preparing the offerings
I do.
were more about the intention behind them?
Absolutely. I think the intention was key.
Right.
Like, it wasn't just about going through the motions.
Yeah.
It was about having that sincere heart,
Right.
that genuine desire to be reconciled.
So it's a more nuanced approach that
I think so.
maybe we might expect at first.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, how these practices impacted their daily lives.
It does.
Did they feel burdened?
Oh, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think
By all the rules?
it probably varied
Yeah.
from person to person.
Oh,
Some
gosh.
people might have felt restricted,
Right.
but others might have found comfort in meaning.
In that structure?
In the structure, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like how some people thrive on routine,
Yeah.
while others feel stifled.
Yeah.
It's about perspective, right?
Right. And we have to remember, these laws were given in a very specific historical
Absolutely.
and cultural context.
Very different from our own.
Totally.
This was the small nation
Mm-hmm.
surrounded by powerful empires
Right.
with very different beliefs and practices.
So it was about more than just personal entirety.
I mean, it was about cultural survival.
Yeah.
It was about preserving their identity, their values, their sense of community.
And it's important to remember that Leviticus wasn't static.
No, it wasn't.
Like it was interpreted.
It was
reinterpreted over time.
Yeah.
And the rabbis developed
Okay.
elaborate systems of commentary.
Absolutely.
So it's even though these laws are thousands of years old,
It's amazing, isn't it?
they're still alive.
They're still evolving.
and evolving.
Yeah, yeah.
We've talked a lot about the rules and the rituals, but what about the ethical and social justice dimensions.
I think that's one of the most amazing things about Leviticus.
Okay.
Is how it seamlessly weaves together this ritual purity with a deep concern for social justice.
Are there any specific examples that come to mind?
So many, but I think the laws against defrauding workers or mistreating foreigners, those resonate really deeply with us today.
Like with our modern concerns about...
Yeah, about economic inequality and social responsibility.
It's interesting because you wouldn't expect to find those kinds of laws in such an ancient text.
No.
It challenges our assumptions about the past.
It does, yeah.
Like Leviticus reminds us that the pursuit of justice and compassion has always been a human concern.
It has.
And not just as an abstract idea, but like...
as concrete laws that were lived out in daily life.
Yeah, they understood that true holiness isn't just about performing rituals.
It's about embodying compassion and acting justly.
Are there other examples of those social justice laws that come to mind?
Well, we talked about the gleaning laws. There are also laws about fair lending practices, prohibiting usury exploitation of those in need. It even mandates the cancellation of debts.
Wow.
Every 7 years.
That's amazing.
The sabbatical year.
It's like a built-in system for economic redistribution. It's incredible how these laws...
I know, it's mind-blowing.
...anticipated some of the challenges that we're still facing.
Yeah.
What other wisdom is hidden in these pages?
That's the question, isn't it?
Right. Where else can we learn?
Exactly.
If we just approach it with...
an open mind.
An open mind and a willingness to listen.
I think that's key.
We come to these ancient texts sometimes with our preconceived notions.
We do.
But if we allow ourselves to be challenged, to be surprised.
Yeah, to be open.
We might discover something new.
Absolutely.
That transforms our understanding of the world and ourselves.
Yeah.
It's a journey of discovery.
It is.
And we're taking it together.
Step by step.
Step by step.
One insight at a time.
So why don't we pause here?
Okay.
Let our listeners absorb all this information.
Yeah, good idea.
We'll be back soon for the final part.
Looking forward to it.
Our Leviticus deep dive, where we'll explore even more of the hidden depths and connect them to the big questions we're facing today.
I love it.
Don't go anywhere.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the final part of our Leviticus deep dive.
Glad to be here.
I have to say, this book has really challenged my assumptions. It's really opened my eyes.
It's pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Leviticus gives us this glimpse into a world where the sacred wasn't, confined to temples or special occasions.
Right.
It was everywhere.
It was in everything.
It was in everything, yeah.
It's amazing.
From the food they ate to the clothes they wore.
Yeah, imagine that.
Imagine, like, preparing a meal.
Yeah.
Being an act.
It's like a spiritual act. It's so different from our modern worldview.
Yeah, it really is.
I wonder, like, was that constant awareness of the divine, was that a source of comfort?
I don't know.
Or was it a burden?
It's a good question.
You know?
Maybe it was both.
Yeah, maybe.
But it really highlights how our worldview shapes everything.
Right. It's all about perspective.
It is.
Remember how we were talking about that idea of holy versus common?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know, at first it seemed really strict.
It did.
But now I'm starting to see it in a new light.
It wasn't just about, physical cleanliness. It was about recognizing the presence of the divine
in all things,
in every aspect of creation.
Yeah.
It's profound.
And living in a way that honors that.
Exactly.
It's a big idea.
It is.
It makes you think about how we
It does.
often try to compartmentalize things.
Right. Separate the sacred from the secular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what if we saw everything as sacred?
Yeah. It's beautiful. Leviticus invites us to do that.
It does.
To see the world through this different lens.
And to find meaning and purpose in it.
Yeah, it's not just a set of rules.
Right.
It's a guide to a more connected and fulfilling.
It's a roadmap.
Yeah, like a road.
To a more mindful way of life.
Exactly.
Even if we don't follow all the laws literally today.
We can still learn.
I think there are still so many important principles in there.
I think so, too.
The emphasis on social justice, for instance.
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
You know.
The treatment of the poor and vulnerable, fairness in business.
Yeah.
The sabbatical year, the Jubilee year.
It's all there.
It's all there.
Yeah, it's a commitment to creating a just
and compassionate society.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And those ideas aren't unique to ancient Israel.
No, they're not.
Right. I mean, think about the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
The labor movement.
The push for sustainability.
Yeah, all these movements.
They all echo these principles.
Right. This idea that we have to care.
Yeah, we have a responsibility.
To care for each other.
Yeah, and to create a world where everyone can thrive.
Exactly.
It's a timeless message.
It is.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Leviticus, I'm just left with this sense of awe.
I know.
And responsibility.
It's powerful stuff.
It is.
You know, it's amazing how these ancient texts
can
speak to us.
Yeah.
Across the millennia.
So thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure.
For being our expert guide.
I've enjoyed it.
Through Leviticus.
Yeah.
And thank you, our listeners, for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you've come away.
We hope you learned something.
And a newfound appreciation for this amazing book. It's really quite a book.
Until next time, keep seeking.
Keep questioning.
Keep questioning.
Keep diving deep.
Farewell and happy learning.
Happy learning. Small trick